of the key areas where talent leaders can make an impact on the organization is through performance reviews. And right now, we all know the story. It's so common. A manager and an employee have a performance review, and let's assume the best. Let's assume the manager actually did have a really productive coaching conversation with that employee. They identified an area for improvement. They both agree. They're both clear on it. Unfortunately, in most circumstances, once they leave that conversation, most of that doesn't get brought up again because they're back into back-to-back meetings or into out-of-scope projects or loss of budget or needing more budget or, just all of the problems that come in day-to-day and all of the different conversations that they forget what they talked about. And it's not out of any poor intention. It's just out of busyness. And then, fast forward 6 or 12 months to your next performance review, manager looks back on what did we talk about last time and realizes, crap, I as the manager didn't keep coaching my employee in that. Or they think, oh, the employee didn't own their development and they didn't step it up there. Either way, it feels like something or someone failed. And I'd actually like to assert that we're not going to change people's minds and how they work to just always be able to remember. What we can change is how we use technology to meet people in those stressful moments, in those busy moments, in those seconds between meetings, and be able to give them the insight they need to remember what was on their performance review and apply it to what they're walking into, what's happening in their day-to-day. Because unfortunately, usually after a performance cycle ends, the goal is documented in a system that nobody is working within. Maybe you have the success rate of it turns into an individual development plan, and then that sits in a system where maybe somebody logs in once or twice or maybe 5 times a year, but they're not going to it as consistently as they're going to their email, to their messaging apps, to their conversations with coworkers, because we're just busy. It's no malintent. It's just the flow of work is very strong. It's very full of things that we need to think about that consume our minds. And so we need to get those goals out of those systems and into the places where people are having conversations, into the places where people are needing to focus all of their mental energy so that they can be successful. We think, hey, if I accomplish this goal, or if I can help people accomplish goals, we will be successful. But what is actually happening in people's day-to-day minds is, I need to get through this next conversation. I need to accomplish this overall project. And we forget then about how we wanted to invest in ourselves, how we want to develop ourselves, or we just simply don't see the way that that goal applies to this conversation or this project. Now, with an AI coach, it can break down all of that data and give you practical suggestions. And people can be chatting with it in their Microsoft Teams or their calendar or through their email, and it can then break down, here's the most important thing to your day. I know this because it's on your calendar. I know this because of past conversations. And it can then say, here's the best way to apply this goal to today, to this next meeting, to this next project. Or here's how to work on this goal with somebody that is on your team and how they can help you through this and with this. That is the power of what can happen when we take performance reviews, goals, development plans, and we put them into an AI coach so that we're actually there with our people every single day in what they are stressed in the problems that are consuming their minds. We can bring that information to them and then they can apply it, and then they can start to see growth. And then they keep coming back to that AI coach for more because it is already there, easy at their fingertips, giving them information, not that they think HR wants them to have, but that they know makes their day less stressful. They know flipped that one relationship from feeling domineering or like their voice didn't matter to actually understanding how to be successful in that relationship. Whatever their scenario is, the AI coach can understand it, break down your siloed HR talent data, and make it applicable in the flow of work. But What about the managers? Because they still are such a critical part of every employee's development. How they hold accountability, how they remember, oh, this is what we talked about in our performance review, and continue to coach their employees in it, in team meetings, in one-on-ones, in the flow of work, in that side conversation. How might the managers be better supported? Well, imagine if they had a prompt before a one-on-one that said, hey, remember, this is this employee's goal. Remember, you have given this employee feedback in the past, and here's what you need to remember this time to make this more successful. Would you like to role play having this conversation? The AI coach can be coming into wherever they're working so that they can have short snippets of the right information that they need to help them grow and develop their employees, whether the information they need is tactical information, like, oh, yes, this is what you talked about in your performance review, or this is a career path goal that this employee has, or whether the insight they need is more about building their inner confidence, their wisdom, their fortitude to overcome what it is that's blocking them as a leader from having successful, uncomfortable conversations. Maybe it's helping them not to talk most of the time and not to steamroll the conversation, but it's helping them to ask the right questions to better understand the perspective of the employee. Maybe it is helping them understand that as a manager, they care a little too much about being liked, and there is actually tactics they can employ to help them care more about and effectively about holding accountability, because that is truly caring for the employee. It's helping them grow. Whatever it is, every individual, we have our own complicated blockers that keep us from engaging in coaching, engaging in accountability, engaging in developing the people around us. And the best informed AI coaches can know this. That's why we here at Cloverleaf, we partner with the leading behavioral assessments, because those behavioral assessments, think DISC, Enneagrams, Clifton Strengths Finder, all of these assessments help to unveil the complicated thought patterns that every individual has that hold us back or that maybe make us go a little too far too fast. All of that can be exposed, understood, and inform the AI coach, along with all that HR data, to help every single person develop themselves and develop each other, and especially leaders and managers, help them to know how to effectively support and serve and encourage and challenge every single person that rolls up under them. And imagine if that was happening. That's the opportunity that talent development has now in 2026. We can be at the forefront of using AI for good to push people into the friction, uncomfortable relational moments with the right support so that it's less uncomfortable, so that it's more empowering, so that it's more strengthening to the relationships, to the individuals, to the team performance, to the overall organizational speed and capacity. That is the opportunity that we have when performance reviews aren't a check-the-box activity that's siloed away, but is actually something that is informing daily support that every employee is getting in the flow of work, in the tools they have to depend on for their success every day. Not when it's off to the side in your HR technology. Those are the places where employees are going to get the information they need to succeed for their projects. So why can't it also be the places they're going to get the information to succeed in their relationships, in their development, in their goals, in their career pathing? That is the opportunity we have right now in 2026. Imagine that you have an AI coach alongside all of your leadership development. Historically, and mostly currently, leadership development takes a cohort of high potential folks or of executive leaders or folks who are new level managers, and it takes them outside of the day-to-day, and it puts them in a cohort of their peers, and it teaches them concepts and helps them build their own self-awareness through behavioral assessments, and it equips them with peers that are also in a similar scenario, and all of those things are amazing. And then they go back into the flow of work where they have their direct reports who did not learn any of this with them, who are not operating the same way that their peers are, who don't have their self-awareness or their behavioral assessments or the frameworks, don't have a knowledge of any of that. And then it is the burden is on that leader to figure out, how do I take all that knowledge and apply it to this situation, apply it to this person who's very different than that person, who's very different than this other person I lead. That is asking way too much mental gymnastics on the people who are so tapped already to be managing performance, to be managing budget, P&Ls, to be managing resources and timelines. There's so much already on their shoulders. They can't possibly, even with the best of intentions, remember all of the things we teach them in these courses and then apply them and then alter them and reapply them in different ways with different scenarios and different people. It's just not possible. The brain does not have capacity for that. What it does have capacity for is nudges that are coming to the leader and saying, hey, remember this. Hey, you're walking into a one-on-one. You're walking into this pitch meeting. Here's some information that you need to have that applies what you have learned in the past and has it now in the flow of work for you. And then that leader can interact with that. It can chat with it. It can practice a role play. It can ask a specific question of, well, what I'm really struggling with is I'm worried about my skip boss not even listening to me. And the AI coach could then give those leaders information. That is the power of AI coaching in the flow of work alongside our leadership development programs. And if we don't do this now in 2026, we risk burnt out leaders, which is nothing new, but we don't need it anymore. We risk our people not being developed, not just our leaders, but who they are expected to develop. We risk our organization living in a place of fear and scarcity rather than empowerment and emotional intelligence. And that then risks we lose psychological safety, which kills our creativity, our innovation, our ability to problem solve, our ability to be agile within chaos, which, hey, that's just the world we live in. The stock market's never going to be stable. What our competitors are doing is always going to be keeping us on our toes. There's so much innovation. There's so much disruption right now. We need our people to feel invested into and to be bringing their best as leaders, as individual contributors. Everyone across the organization needs more support, and that can happen and is already happening in a number of organizations when they partner their leadership development alongside an AI coach that implements it all into the day-to-day. And if we don't do this, our leaders go back to their stressful environments and their brains flip back into a place of scarcity, into a place of survival, into a place of all these changes are coming at me. And they forget when their brain is in that place, they literally forget and cannot function in the place of building relational capacity, having curiosity for others, taking the perspective of others. And that's not just a relational need. That is an information flow need of being able to take in the information their direct reports are giving them about projects and being able to flexibly, creatively think about how to adjust. That is the risk we have of when we put leaders and we put managers back into the flow of work and they don't have ongoing support. At best, they will try something and it will work once, but not twice. And then they move on and they forget it because they are in a deluge of change and of people's needs and of lack of resources. And let's talk about competency models or leadership characteristic or principles that we want everyone to adopt. This is how we measure our leaders. Sometimes it's how we measure our entire organization. Do you have agency? Do you have integrity? Do you have agility? These types of characteristics are these values that we want our leaders especially to have, and we will grade them on them. Why do they often feel like this thing that just sits off to the side? How do we actually get them in conversation? How do we make it part of the backbone of our culture and our organizations? Well, that happens when that language is applied in daily meetings, in daily stressors, in daily needs. And the way you do that is with technology that today can understand, okay, this is the situation the person is in. This is the leadership competency they need to embrace. And here is practical short language on how they can do that right now. So imagine an AI coach where a leader goes to it and says, my team is falling behind on our goals. And that AI coach can understand the dynamics of the team, can understand individual psychology, can understand that leader, can understand so much data plus the leadership competencies, and can coach that leader. Hey, here's what you need to keep in mind about how to motivate these folks, and here's the leadership competency to keep in mind. Or here's what you need to know about accountability, and here's the leadership competency that fits within that. And it is coaching them with the language of your organization.